Hello, welcome to a Friday night in for a change, chatting books for Tusk Festival. Honestly, big thanks for the lovely ask, thinking I can do this kind of thing. I'm Helen, I run an independent bookshop in Northumberland called Forum Books, and I'm going to be talking to Eliza Clark, who's written one of my favourite debuts. Eliza! This year, Eliza's from Newcastle. But you live in London now, is that right?
Yes, I do, yeah. I'm back again. I did my degree down here and then moved back up to Newcastle, and then I've moved back down again. Been back for a year now, a year exactly, almost.
It's quite a long time when you're so young, and you literally look like you're in the bright lights of the big city. I feel like I've got some candles on somewhere in the north, keeping warm. But there's been kind of quite a lot made about the fact that the book's kind of set in Newcastle, and just that whole kind of setting thing. Are you a bit bored with that? Are you loving talking about it? Or are you?
Yeah, I feel a little bit weird about it because I sort of don't want to have like elected myself the spokesman for the North-South divide.
It happens.
So I'm getting asked about it in like almost everything, and I don't know, you almost just want to, I guess not just for a change of subject, but almost just because I don't want to present myself as like an authority on it. It's just sort of, I've lived in exactly two cities. I've lived in Newcastle and I've lived in London, and I haven't lived anywhere else. I don't know that much about the history of the North-South divide, so it's just I suppose getting asked about it every time does make you feel a bit like, oh God, I hope nobody thinks I think I'm an expert on this. I just, yeah.
Well, I think it's true of anybody. I mean, I'm a bit older than you, but I moved down to London to study, and it was the same thing. Anytime you opened your mouth, and it was just, I just got really a bit bored of it and thought, I'm going to get a chip on my shoulder, or I don't know. It's like I want to talk about, especially I grew up in concerts. It was always about crisp factories and crisps, and like I've got other chat. We've got other chat as well. I should kind of say that I've heard in the chat room bit. If anybody out there's got questions for us, I'll keep an eye on it, and we'll try and kind of weave those in. I'm going to throw some daft questions at Eliza and see what she makes of them as well. But I'll keep a little eye out on the chat room to see what we've got. I did want to say congratulations on your Books in My Bag Readers Award shortlist thing. we really like this one as independent bookshops because we get to choose them, and it's the ones that independent bookshops have been reading, and James from our shop had been on the panel. So I don't know how you got shortlisted, but somehow we might have had something to do with it.
Yes, thank you for that. But yeah, that's been really exciting. I only found out about it I think 4 or 5 days before, so it was very and it's been cool to be on the billboard that they've got in Bristol at the minute. That's been very exciting.
I think that's a really brilliant idea. They've done some lovely kind of fresh kind of marketing with it, and I think just especially as well doing it outside of London, doing it somewhere else makes it really interesting. What I was going to say, just to go back to the start, this year must have been, it must be a strange time anyway to put your book out, and especially when it's a debut and not really knowing what to expect. But I think this would have been a bit of a not bumpy journey, just a bubbly one, just an interesting one. So I'm really pleased you've got that kind of recognition. But has it been what you expected, or did you have zero expectations? Or
it's weird. I had zero expectations, but among the zero expectations, pandemic definitely wasn't one. If you'd have asked me, I don't know, we announced the book was on the 2020 list in September of 2019. So I think if you'd asked me what are you expecting? What's your wildest prediction for the next year? I don't even think plague would have been on it. So that's been strange, but it has been good to just sort of. I feel like I've been really lucky with it, and I feel like, I don't know, I've maybe potentially benefited from like eyes on screens. It has been a little bit rubbish to not be able to like get out and physically do as many events and stuff. But I have really appreciated the way that people have kind of gotten behind my book and like debuts in general this year, because it has been really tough. I think I was kind of lucky to just dodge the bullet that a lot of the authors that were in March, April, May kind of got stuck with. I think that was a really, really tough situation. So I'd probably, I don't know, I guess if you're a fan of books in general, I'd maybe suggest you comb back into that specific period of 2020, because I feel like a lot of people kind of got a bit, just a bit knackered, completely unfairly. I think I've come out of it quite well, really.
I think so. I think it's been awful, and especially, you know, just not having bookshops open is, and I think, you know, we always like to think we're the great place where people can discover something different or something they might not have happened upon. Not all my customers are on social media or other things, and it's just, you know, I think I love kind of playing Twitter. I think Instagram's a really pretty place to try and find new things, but it's just another way of how you can find stuff as well. So no, it's dead interesting. And did you start off doing stuff with New Writing North as well?
Yes, I did. Yeah. It was, what year did I start working with them? Like late 2017, early 2018. I applied for a job with them, and I got an interview, and I was really surprised I got an interview because I was really underqualified, I thought. And they interviewed me, and I didn't get the job because I was super underqualified, but they did like me and offered me a chance to do some mentoring on their it was the Northern Rock Fund. I think it's now the Young Writers Talent Fund. So I was like in the transition between the Northern Rock stuff ending and it becoming this different pot of funding stuff. And yeah, that was great. I did some training to be like a facilitator for young people's writing workshops at like the start of 2018, and I swapped over to having like my own like one-on-one mentorship, which I did with Matt Wazowski, who wrote the Six Stories books.
Yeah,
I mean, you know quite
Matt
well.
But he's really awesome as well. His kind of darkness and gothicness would have been an interesting parent. Was he what you expected from a mentor, or? Yeah,
I guess. I had like no expectations. So but yeah, no, he was great. He's a fantastic mentor, and just like a really good teacher in general. And it was great to work with him. I was just kind of I came to doing that at a period where I was working at we'll call it an unnamed technology, fruit branded technology shop at the time. So I was really drained, and I just didn't really have any time to do creative stuff because I was working there full time. And I went down to 4 days a week, and I started doing the sort of facilitating stuff and then the mentoring, and it just gave me a lot more like time and space to write. And I don't think I would have been able to do like any of this without that New Writing North funding. It just made like a huge difference to my entire life, I suppose. So I wrote the start of Boy Parts while I was working with Matt, and I did a little bit. It was just kind of like and then that sort of mentoring ran out, and I kind of finished that. But Matt sort of stayed on the line and continued to help me and kind of went above and beyond, which I'm really grateful for. And yeah, and then I finished the first draft in like December of 2018, and then spent the first half of 2019 just editing it over and over and over and over and over again. And then Influx picked it up in July of 2019. And then that was.
So that's like a year from them picking it up to being published is pretty cool.
Pretty quick.
That's pretty fantastic. And it's a great cover. I should kind of say, if anybody hasn't read it, a little bit of what Boy Parts is about.
Yeah, God, we should have started with that, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I've kind of missed that bit out. Do you want to give us a little
yeah, sure.
lead in?
Boypot is about a female photographer called Irina who takes suggestive photographs of average-looking men that she drags in off the street. A career has previously kind of seemed like it was going to go quite well, and then had like a complete failure at the launch when she moved back to Newcastle, sort of suddenly in the middle of her master's degree. And and it's about her kind of getting the opportunity to resurrect her career with a trendy gallery opening in a trendy exhibition in London, and kind of having a bit of a nervous breakdown around that, and sort of meeting her new muse, who is a shy man that works in a Tesco.
How did you kind of, I don't know, it's not like so much think of that storyline, but was it the character of Irina that kind of drove you through it, or did you have like an idea of like where you might want it to go and do things without wanting to spoil it for anyone?
I was writing like because I was doing the mentoring stuff, I was writing a lot of short horror fiction, and I kind of wanted to do almost just like a short horror story about a female photographer, so almost like a slasher thing. Like have you seen the sort of 1960s film Peeping Tom? It's like a very, very early slasher film. I think it might even be pre-Psycho, but I might be wrong about that. And it's about a photographer that like photographs people as he kills them with the tripod of his camera. And I sort of wanted to do almost something just sort of a bit like that, really. And I saw the music video for the Charlie XCX song Boys, which is like this sort of bubbly pop song, and then with a bunch of like male musicians sort of cavorting and kind of like having like pillow fights and washing cars and doing like music video girly stuff. And I sort of really enjoyed that like aesthetic and that kind of inversion of like the male gaze. And I sort of wanted to like sort of smush this together and do something in the form of like a short horror story with it. But it just kind of spanned completely out of control. Like I got really into writing Irina. I think the voice was originally a lot more like just kind of a lot more like my internal monologue. So it was like definitely like much meaner than me, but it was a lot more like a lot more self-deprecating and a lot more self-aware and more like sort of I guess like anxious and self-deprecating. So I kind of went through and stripped that out, and then she was just like a lot more fully formed after that. And it was I kind of had like the 3 core plot points in place, which were her kind of the stuff like the opening scene was very similar. And then getting the exhibition and sort of meeting the Eddie from Tesco stuff in the middle, and then like physically going to the exhibition. And then it was just sort of like plugging the rest of the stuff around it and like taking these 3 plot points and like stretching them further apart and finding stuff to put in the middle. So that was kind of where it came from and how it developed. And I wrote it relatively quickly. I think it only took about a year, which is I'm told very, very fast for a book. So no, that's fantastic. Right, I think I've got about 3 things from there I wanted to ask you, and I think the first one, especially because this is for Tusk, which is a music festival, and you mentioned like the videos and stuff. There's music kind of mentioned in the book, so it was kind of like how important is music to you, just like cultural form and stuff that would inspire you. And there's like playlists for Irina as well, isn't there? So just to talk about the music bit. I made my own playlist for it, just because I always write to music. So I normally write to film soundtracks, actually, just because it's quite an easy way to like pick a mood for something. So I was doing that, and I just sort of edited the playlist a little bit, and I think I linked to it. I think you can get it on Spotify, so it's like a fun thing to listen to maybe when you're reading the book. But also I have this like kind of running joke through the book, which I think is funny, at least it's a joke to me, where Irina only listens to like really, really horrible, like heavy industrial noise music, which I don't personally listen to much of at all. But my boyfriend's really into it, so I got him to basically give me a list of like what's the most like obnoxious and like most, I don't know, almost like what would be the kind of thing that if you knew somebody was just sort of like walking around town listening to that as they were like doing their shopping, you'd be a bit like, God, are you sure? So I think we've got like a playlist. We did like a mock-up playlist of the kind of stuff that she'd be listening to, which you can listen to, which is all just, again, just harsh noise.
But that's fun, because you mentioned the opening scene, which I absolutely like. The opening chapter's fantastic and I loved it. And it's one of those ones, once you've read that, you're just like, yeah, I'm in. Like, there's just little things that really click with it. But she does put on some of that music in the bar, doesn't she, to try and kind of get rid of people. So I thought I'll have a listen. And it's not an easy listen.
Yeah, no, it was Merzbow that she puts on in the bar. Don't mind Merzbow, I will. Yeah.
And the other bit when you're saying about kind of subverting gazes and putting, young lads in a position that, I guess often would see it as more young women. The other bit I thought was really interesting from the start is it's like one of these lads' mums that comes to confront her. Mm. And I think that's really interesting as well, because, well, there's a lot of stuff about parents I was going to talk to you about, because you kind of dedicate your book to your mum and dad, but with a don't read it. And then you've got kind of the parent, like the mum of the boy at the start, kind of trying to come to it. And then like Irina's mum and dad, just the way that they are as well. I think parents can be quite kind of really good components and really lovely kind of fun. And it was just really interesting, different kind of versions of parents. Do you know what I mean? That was really quite like not the usual, like they've broken you, or there's something that couldn't be without. Was that something that you'd not overthought, but just like really wanted to put in as something a bit?
Yeah, definitely. I always think like a character's parents are like a really great way to, like, almost just like a great shorthand to explaining that person. Like I think sometimes just when you're a kid as well, like if you have like a friend that's a bit weird and then like maybe you meet their parents, you can be like, oh, right.
Got it.
And I've always quite liked using like parental figures in writing as a way to just like expand on the character that you're kind of focused on. So I kind of wanted her to have this mom to be sort of just kind of like hypercritical and overbearing, and to have this like sense that he has this like one place in her life where she almost doesn't really have any power, and that to have that maybe explain why she's a little bit obsessed with trying to dominate people all the time.
But I think that's one of the times when you're really on her side, because you're thinking, no, stick to your guns, and you're not you're not rubbish.
Yeah, and with our dad, I just sort of like, I hadn't really decided what our dad was going to be like for ages, almost until I kind of got to the point that I was going to introduce him. And I really didn't want it to be like, oh, so she's like that because she's got these huge daddy issues. I actually thought it would just be funny if our dad was just like a nice man, almost too nice.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed working with the parents and stuff.
And have your mum and dad read the book?
No, I think they've been quite good. No, they've told me that they say that they haven't read it, so I'm gonna choose to believe them. I think that they haven't. I don't know if maybe they'll read it later, but they haven't read it yet, which I suppose is fine. I'm quite happy with that for the minute.
I think that there's a lot where you'd kind of think that Irina's like a classic kind of unreliable narrator, but I think she's a bit more than that, because I think, well, maybe she's not always being truthful to herself either. And I really liked her because she wasn't likable, but I did want her to be nice at the flow. I did feel a bit sorry for a friend who's sometime lover, but you just, I don't know. Is it easy to write somebody that's more difficult? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, no, in some ways it is, because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like there's more like wiggle room when you're just kind of clearly trying to write somebody that's unlikable. Like, I feel like if I was trying to write like a protagonist that was supposed to be really likable and really relatable, and then people read it and were like, oh god, the protagonist is so fucking obnoxious and so irritating, I'd be like, oh no. But I don't know, sometimes I do, like, if you do read a book where there's been clearly like a concerted effort to make like a relatable or likable protagonist, I do quite often think like just write like a real person. I would rather read about a real person than about like what, I don't know, your projection of what you think you should be, or like, yeah, this kind of idealized version of yourself, I suppose.
Well, I think as well there's lots of greys, isn't there? It's not necessarily just like, you know, a black and white version of being kind of good and bad, and it's when it's a bit murky, it's more honest, and it's more interesting as well. There's quite a few things I think on kind of consent, which I think are really interesting, and I was still thinking about it, and then watching things like I May Destroy You as well, when you've just got these kind of, I hadn't had such a heady night out as I had with like Irina for a while, which is quite nice when you stop and then. Can you talk to us a bit about that? Because I think it's really well done, and it does really make you think. And it's just that way sometimes of when you're trying to, it seems like people are trying to kind of be pleasing, but not necessarily happy with their actions. And I think it makes me think.
Yeah, I am really interested in like consent as a topic. I feel like with the Me Too stuff, I feel like the Me Too stuff, and I guess the reckonings that the Catholic Church has repeatedly had, I feel like society is really still not quite able to understand just how like incredibly prevalent sexual assault is, like at all levels of society, happening to people at all ages, perpetrated by people at all ages. I really just don't think people have like fully grasped like how common this is and how constant this is. So I wanted just a book where I wanted to write something where that almost like explored the sort of just very quotidian nature of stuff like this, that it does really just feel like a day-to-day fact of Irina's existence, that these things are happening to her, but she's also doing these things as well. And I feel like we're kind of due like a bigger conversation about consent outside of just these kind of narratives where there's like this like one big monster abusing like huge amounts of institutional power, because that is like a much easier narrative for people to process. Like it's much easier to think about, I don't know, like Harvey Weinstein doing all of this harassment than it is to think about I don't know, say like somebody's stepdad who has never done that before but has a nervous breakdown and then does end up doing something terrible. And I did like quite a lot of research into like the way that sex offenders operate and stuff for it, and particularly female sex offenders. I was interested in this thing called traumatic reenactment, which is this idea that like a lot of female sex offenders engage in something called traumatic reenactment, where they reenact their own abuse on children. So just about how interesting and about how just kind of tragic that is. That it just feels very like under discussed and very I think because it is just difficult to talk about. I don't really think people kind of want to quite confront this sort of thing.
Well, no, and I think that's what a lot of the problems have been. It's just like, can we just kind of pretend this like didn't happen, because that's kind of easier. And I think if somebody's like a difficult person, whether it's like they're not likable or their behaviour's weird, it makes it kind of hard to I don't know, to listen to them reasonably, or to kind of, you know, make that just as valid.
Yeah,
and I thought
definitely.
that was really kind of well done in the book. So
yeah, thank you.
that's I think where I was going with that. You obviously went to art college and stuff. That was in the probably author bio in the back of the book. And there's a lot about the art world and this kind of snobbishness and the London centricness of it, and the stuff about kind of working class stuff as well. And I kind of think that's probably similar publishing and books to an extent. I mean, I think we are lucky we've got New Writing North, and there are things that happen outside of London. I'm not sure how much of it happens with music, because I think usually there's kind of quite a good, well, there's usually good music scene and other stuff. But in terms of that, do you think that's still very true? And that was like something that you really kind of wove into the storyline as well, with just how she wasn't in London. So she's, you know, on the back foot if you're just not there.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of definitely. I feel like when my degree finished and people were kind of like deciding whether they were gonna leave London or stick it out or not, I do feel like there was almost a bit of a sense of like, oh, you're going home, are you? For people who did go home rather than stay. I mean, to be fair, it is kind of different. Like, I do have the benefit of being from Newcastle, which is obviously a city, but like when you do come from like a small town or a village, then it is like a little bit different to I guess to going back to somewhere where you know that there's definitely going to be a bunch of stuff on. But so a lot of people don't really feel that they don't really have the choice to move back. Like, I know that eventually in Newcastle I would be able to get like a job somewhere creative eventually, but yeah, I guess if you live in the sort of middle of, I don't know, somewhere very rural, then that might not be a choice. But yeah, to kind of, I guess, digress a bit. The sort of trying to go to art school as like a person who's not very connected and not very very privileged, outside of just sort of having a kind of roof over my head and never being hungry as a child and stuff. But yeah, I think a lot of people who go to art school come from such like a great degree of privilege and such a great degree of connection that there is kind of like not very much like understanding for the way that other people live, which can be very, very jarring and off-putting when you're there. And you almost, I don't know, I feel like they could almost do with like warning you, like if you're going to be that kind of like state school tick box for the year, just like they all kind of round you into a hall and sit you down and be like, okay, so there are going to be people here who are who have like no concept of life outside of private schools, and this is the first time that they've been let off the leash, and they probably never met someone from a state school before. So just a heads up that you know, these people are here and they will be arguing with you at parties that private school is actually really, really difficult and awful and a horrible ordeal, and you're just going to have to sit there like,
Just
yeah.
It's I think the book's quite kind of filmic, and I know like you love your movies and stuff. Would you like to see it made into a film? And have you got kind of a fantasy cast in mind? Because I was just thinking as well, we haven't because Trainspotting is really quite old now, but it was just one of those ones that was just quite zeitgeisty, had a really interesting soundtrack. Music was a real part of it as well. I was just thinking, God, it's amazing that there hasn't been not the same film, but kind of something that was just so refreshing. And I was just thinking Boy Pots would be great for something like that.
Yeah,
played around with it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I will not confirm or deny anything at this point, but there may or may not be something moving in that regard. Maybe, possibly, maybe, but I couldn't possibly say, obviously. In terms of like a fantasy cast, I kind of don't know. I feel like a lot of the people in it are so physically specific, and like I don't know. I would really struggle. Like a couple of times, people have kind of been like, "Oh, who would you cast as Irina? And I've been kind of like, I don't know. Somebody with a Geordie accent who's really tall and attractive, I suppose. I would probably just, I don't know, I'd probably just like street cast some unknown people, which I know is like a really boring answer, but I can't really think of anything else.
No, I think that would be really good. And it's kind of the thing when, you know, it's kind of those opportunities, isn't it? It's like, you know, if you haven't read the book, if you're not reading a book you enjoy, you should write it. And if you're not watching a movie or something like that, I just think it'd be really interesting to see. And I think it probably, you know, somebody maybe a bit unknown, but yeah, I think that would be good. I've done a bit about music. I've worked in kind of publishing before, where sometimes you're kind of looking when reviews come in to see what adjectives are used, so you can kind of grab them to put on the jackets. And it's just gone through the adjectives that have been used again to describe boy parts, which is great. And it's terrifying, feverish, hilarious, completely different, gripping and flinching, propulsive, powerful. How weird is it getting reviews? Do you like to read them, or are you a bit?
No, I've stopped reading them. I was reading them at first, but I've stopped now. I just kind of, I'm like trying, if people like tag me and stuff, I'm just sort of like saying thank you, but not really reading in too much depth. Because I think even, I don't know, I feel like even positive reviews can kind of have this sort of slightly negative effect of just like inflating your ego. And I feel like I rely very heavily on my own sort of self-editing skills to know that, to kind of have any confidence in my work. So I really don't want, I don't know, basically I feel like it'll be detrimental if I do start to get the impression that I might actually be quite good at this. I think it's better that I just sort of remain at like this sort of very baseline, rock bottom sort of writing self-esteem to make sure that the work sort of stays at a consistent quality. But no, the reviews have been, it has been like really exciting to kind of see that there hasn't really been like any negative stuff at all, which has been really weird. I suppose if it kind of potentially gets more popular, that might be. If you'd like to email me a long terrible review, somebody out there, then feel free, I suppose. But I was expecting it to be like way more divisive. I thought I would get way more a lot more shit for it, to be honest. So I'm quite surprised. So, but maybe that's to come. Something to look forward to.
Yeah. No, I didn't think so. Yeah. No, you're great. You're fine. But that's nicely self-deprecating. You do a lot, I think, in your work in life, on social media and stuff as well. And there's a lot of that woven into the book, and it's such a strong part of it. I've just finished reading Grace Dent's book, and I probably grew up about the same time as her, and she's remembering her childhood and kind of teenage years without social media, and it's almost kind of mad how it's such a strong point. And I love it being part of books, but how important for you was it to put it in, but in a way that felt kind of authentic, but wasn't going to be like dated in 2 years or something? I don't know. Yeah, maybe it should be dated in 2 years.
Yeah, my thought on it was honestly that I really didn't mind if it dated or not, because I feel like stuff dates badly when you don't lean into the era more. So I feel like if you're trying to give it like a general sort of 5 years either side of when it was made, I do think you can date quite badly then. But I feel like the book's anchored for me very firmly in the summer of 2018. And I'm kind of fine with it being like, I guess, dated to that exact point. In terms of like how important it was to weave in, I honestly just didn't really think about it. I think just because you'll have grown up with it though, because you're dead young. Yeah, I'm 26, which means I'm like the absolute kind of youngest a millennial can be. I'm like technically more on the sort of line between Gen Z and millennial, so I'm like a zillennial technically. And I think as we sort of start to get more authors that are like my age and younger, I think I don't really think we're going to be reading many like literary novels without social media stuff in them. It's just like, I don't know, it's just it's part of the way I speak, it's part of the way I think, and I don't know how I would like tell a story without it, I suppose, because this is how like pretty much all of my social interactions have some way, not all of them, but like a lot of my relationships and stuff are kind of heavily involved social media, text, that sort of thing, from being about like 14 or 15 onwards.
Well, completely. But if you tried to not have it, it would have been like, well, why didn't she text? Or why, do you know what I mean? It's like, what's she doing? Wandering around just like, you know, some money for a phone box that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think
you need to do it.
Yeah, if you want to excise social media from your book, I think you're just going to have to set it in like 1997 or before. There's no way to get around it.
It wouldn't be authentic, I don't think. Sorry, I was just thinking of as well for lockdown, you know, because people are almost joking about kind of lockdown novels and things like that, and I was trying to think of like, well, maybe there could be like a rom-com or something that was kind of unexpected from a pandemic.
No, I'm like totally waiting for the first like all text email, like a sort of You've Got Mail, but during lockdown. It'll be something like that, won't it?
I was thinking, has it helped you kind of write, you know, because we've all meant to have had more time to like do stuff other than work, which isn't always true, but have you been able to be more creative or any bit creative?
Absolutely not. No. I've done very little during lockdown. No, I kind of envy people who are able to. Like, I feel like I should have done more because I don't really have much of an excuse. Like, I know a lot of people have been like busy with like their children and stuff, but no, I do work, but I only work 4 days a week. But I think the situation's just been so like draining, like psychologically and emotionally, that I think it's really difficult to work. Like, I don't know how people are doing anything. Very little.
No, I think that's absolutely fine. I think there's just kind of quite a lot to absorb, and then sometimes you kind of think, oh, I've got a minute, I'll just check and see what's happening in the world, and you'll see various parts on fire and think, oh right, that's thrown me again. So I hope there is something else. That's all I was going to say. So please write some more.
Eventually. Don't I've been getting a little bit better in the last, like, I think in the last 2 months or so. I'm a little bit more in kind of a routine and doing some writing stuff like semi-regularly. But at the start, it was just complete like like just unable to like do anything at all, really. But played a lot of video games. But that's about it. That's not very productive.
Have you been reading much? Have you read anything that's been amazing?
I've been going through little spates, actually. I had like a little I'm just going to pull up my Goodreads list, because, you know, when people ask you if you've, like, I don't know, like what your
what was the last book you read? It's like
yeah, but I had like a little spate of reading quite a few things. In terms of, I read of like new stuff that's come out this year. I recently read If I Had Your Face, the Frances Cha book. And that was excellent. That was really, really good. I definitely recommend that. I also read The Goldfinch. I read The Goldfinch during lockdown. That was big. That was very long. But I really enjoyed that as well. I think I'm like a full-blown Donna Tartt apologist. I really like pretty much. I even quite like The Little Friend, which is the middle book that everybody thinks is rubbish. So... but I think if I Had Your Face is probably the book that I've from this year that I've read that I've enjoyed the most so far.
Fantastic. And that was the lockdown, blah blah blah. So do you know what you're going to do next? Or are you just sticking at the day job? So
I do have another book out with Influx in 2022. allegedly. We'll see. And just in terms of like my own productivity, I'm starting to feel a little bit not very confident in my abilities to get something finished for that year. But I do have that. I'm trying not to talk about it too much, because I do feel like if you talk about it, it's almost like you get the kind of gratification of having spoken about it. So I'm just gonna stay quiet, but it should be fun. And as far as anything that I write is fun, it's like an Eliza fun, so fun with an asterisk, I suppose.
It's not, as long as it's not like organized fun and like not real fun. Right, I've just had a little check, and I think we've got one. There's a comment from Clom. Amazing book, Eliza. Can you talk at all about how Irina is able to get in and out of situations because of how she looks and presents? She seems very aware of the anger, resentment of how people, particularly men, she encounters, perceive her. I think that's a great question.
Yeah,
well done.
No, thanks. Thank you for that question. It's great. I'm like really interested in. So I feel like there are loads of books that have like these very attractive protagonists that just don't have any relationship at all with the way that they look. Like it's that kind of like classic sort of main character that's like waify and like effortlessly beautiful, and everybody she meets is in love with her, but she has like absolutely nothing to say about this, and this doesn't come into the story at all. It just seems to be something that is happening to her. And like I feel like female characters having this like very passive relationship with their own beauty just feels so like unrealistic to me. Like I don't know a single person that's that attractive that doesn't have any thoughts about that or any feelings about that at all. So I really wanted to write somebody that was like very aware of the way that they looked and very aware of how they could leverage that, and how they could work with it. I'm interested in the halo effect as well, which is just basically this sort of psychological phenomenon thing where if you are very attractive, your life is like, it's basically almost like you're walking through life with like a halo around your head, and like you get free stuff and people hold open doors for you, and you can almost just sort of skip through life like la 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 with sort of less difficulties than what like less attractive people have basically. But there's also something particularly with women which is called the reverse halo effect, which is in short just that sometimes other women hate you and there's kind of nothing you can do about it. And the other thing is that they found that in courts, if a woman has done a crime which is nothing to do with how attractive she is, like just say you're just kind of like a hot burglar, you get a much lighter sentence. You tend to get like lighter sentences. But if you've done something which is directly related to how attractive you are, say you are scamming men, where say you're like using your looks to like get into people's houses so you can steal stuff, then you tend to get like a much harsher sentence. And I've just always been interested in like I feel like women should be allowed to have a relationship with our own beauty. I feel like women should be able to talk and acknowledge that they're attractive. It almost just feels like this like huge taboo. And also that there's never really that much coverage of like the amount of graft that goes into like looking pretty. So I sort of wanted to have this like very like tedious routine of her getting up every day and doing this exercise routine, and then like just constantly like monitoring what's going into our body and like making these like alterations, like our waist trainer and stuff. But yeah, I think it's like really interesting, and I feel like a lot of the very attractive women that I'm aware of have like absolutely insane relationships with their body and do bananas things all the time to like upkeep that stuff. And I just think we should talk about it more. I think it should be covered more heavily.
No, I think that's definitely a rich theme as we keep going along that. There was one we did an event with her. She did Little Deaths, and it was based on a true crime story where the children were taken away, they disappeared and were later found murdered. But the mother was arrested because she didn't show what was deemed to be the appropriate emotion. And when she did it as the novel, she kind of did it that she put the makeup on and like did this to hide behind it, and because she didn't want to show her emotion, but how it was kind of changed and misinterpreted.
Yeah,
it's fascinating. But no, more of that. Thank you. Let's see if I've got another last one. How are we doing for time?
Got 5
That's not
minutes.
bad.
Yeah, we did quite well.
Have you got any pets?
No pets. The flat that we live in does not allow pets. We are a pet-free zone,
Does it even
unfortunately.
not? Oh.
I'm waiting for the day that I can finally get a cat. I really like cats. My dad's massively allergic to them, so I couldn't have one as a kid. And then I just didn't have and then I'm finally in like basically the last couple of years where I have been in like stable non-student-y living situations. It's just been in like no cat flats. Also, we do live in like right in the middle of central London. I feel like it would be a bit mean and dangerous to have a cat around here because it's just cars and
lots of busy roads.
Just cars and loads of road work. Yeah.
They can be kind of pretty adept. That wasn't actually meant to be a technical question. I don't know why I thought of that. I loved actually, we did an event at one of the libraries with Matt Wesolowski, and there's a little kind of crime panel, and the brilliant librarian there, she had a kind of a silent but deadly question, which was, what's he